Hi everyone. Welcome to our Onsite SEO panel. Hello to those who are filtering in just at the back. So I am Chloe Smith. I'm a strategic SEO lead at Blue Array. My pronouns are they, she, and I am joined today by Billy and Sarah, who are absolutely wonderful. I'm going to do some very quick intros. Sorry if I sound out of breath. I have just run here. I am a last-minute person. So, first off, we've got Sarah, who is an international SEO consultant and specialist. She specialises in everything from user experience to translation and localization and content strategy. And throughout her career, she's helped these B2B software companies, e-commerce businesses, and startups expand their global reach. She does also manage SEO Barcelona, a multilingual Slack community that fosters knowledge sharing, networking, and socialising amongst SEO professionals, which I think is wonderful.
Woo, Sarah!
Oh, yeah. I'm also joined by Billy, who is the founder of Uptake Agency, which I think is it 8 weeks old now?
8 weeks old.
8 weeks. Just trying to find my notes now, because of course I am. Beyond that, technical SEO, accessibility, all of those fun things. I can't find my notes. Here we go. She's also a Women Tech Makers ambassador and a regular speaker at events promoting diversity and inclusion in the tech industry. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Hooray. Obviously, pretty open agenda. On-site SEO is a very broad topic. I guess the first question, and because it's so broad, is what is SEO to you? And I guess I'll open it to the floor for both of you.
Well, on-page SEO for me, or on-site SEO, I'm going to say on-page because that's what I've always said, but It is meant to be on-site, so sorry. But for me, that is all sorts of stuff. Like, I'm sure it is for everyone. Like, it's all the surface level stuff. It's the things that are important that the users interact with. Which sometimes I feel like on-page can fall into technical, but we're not. I'm also going to avoid external links, whether it's outbound or backlinks while we're talking about this, because I cannot. But for me, it's just like everything a user sees, and we want them to see that as a thing that's not a thing that's so well thought out. It's the efforts that we as SEOs go into. It's the fun, it's the interactive, it's the learning.
The cool shit that people see.
Yeah, it's the cool shit.
Yeah. I think it's also like everything you can do within your website itself. So yeah, from content to technical, but also user experience. It's a very broad term, so it's pretty difficult to define it, right? But yeah, it's just basically, as Billy said, what the user sees, but also like everything you can do on your website.
I guess everything they can interact with as well.
Yeah.
And like basically how accessible the information on your website is and stuff like that.
Architecture.
I get like architecture. I think is a really good topic to maybe start with, because I think that again it's pretty broad in terms of what we want to discuss. How do you go about optimizing your site architecture to kind of facilitate those users accessing the pages that you want them to see? I mean, I can address both of you or open it to the floor. How would you rather?
I think that when it comes to information architecture, I think it's very important to coordinate with UX teams, because it's also it's an SEO responsibility, but also a UX responsibility. And I think that, for example, one of the exercises that you can do is cart sorting. Also, if you can do it with your users, like especially like if you have like big e-commerce sites, like okay, so these items, like if you could structure the site, like what kind of like associations would make more sense. So I think it's very useful for us SEOs to coordinate with UX and with this kind of activities to see like okay, what does make sense for our users, because sometimes I think we also make the mistake of assuming that what we think could be the best may be the best for the users, but we're not the users. So I think it's important to get their feedback when we are planning it.
Yeah, and incorporating kind of your customer success teams and things like that to understand maybe particular pain points and stuff as well. I think it's a really good point optimizing that user journey, because I think it's quite difficult sometimes if you're working in isolation as an SEO, right?
Yeah. And I think that also when planning your architecture, something that when optimizing it, something that we tend to overlook is like the internal searches that are done on our website. If we see that users are searching certain things that we have on our site like quite a lot, and things that we think, oh, this should be pretty straightforward, and the fact they're searching it a lot, to me it means like, oh, they're struggling to find this kind of content. It helps you understand like, okay, this should be easier to find, and the fact they're all looking for it means that the navigation, the architecture is not as straightforward as it should be. I mean, it's also a good indicator of like, oh, perhaps I should be creating more content about this topic depending on what it is, but it can also be like, if we already have like a page about this, like, or I don't know, even pages like customer support, where are they using like the internal search bar to find like a page that should be like easy to spot on like homepage.
I once got the opportunity, which I really hope it happens again, was to work with a business where they were just starting everything again from scratch. It was brilliant. They were like, we're going to take the hit, the old site's going down, let's figure this out, we're going to do it right this time. And where the architecture of the site came from, it was like, well, what was happening before? We know that wasn't working. So we got to explore the competitors. We started from like a keyword research like overhaul from right at the beginning, started identifying key themes, like what should the user journey be when we're on the site. But it started to feel like, oh, we look like every other site in this niche. And we did this thing where it was in a kind of niche where there's a lot of reviews for the competitors. So we went into Trustpilot, we were reading their Google reviews, we went on a real deep dive, and we were starting to try and figure out, what do customer service hear from the most? What are the biggest complaints? What are the bugbears? So when we was recreating this site, we knew kind of, okay, this is a high priority thing. This needs to be in our main navigation. We need to put a focus on this. We can address the concerns that the competitors who are established and they're not going to be able to get to be the architects again and build something from scratch. We're going to jump on this opportunity and change things around. And we got to create something really, really helpful and really interesting. And we built it in a bit of a niche, like a way where we were addressing user concerns like back and forth. And it worked out, like you could just genuinely predict how users were going to end up booking in this niche. So I could tell you, if this person lands on here, there's a very good chance that they're going to sell and we're going to get this conversion from it. And I think we get so fixated on the data as SEOs, especially in practices like this. It's like, okay, these are the pages we need, this is how it needs to connect, this is the process we need to follow to hit this, that we forget that actually there's other stuff there, there's other sites, like we know there's other sites we're stealing their ideas, but let's see where they're going wrong and fix that and jump in there. And stepping away from data made us be able to create something so handy and cool. I loved it.
Yeah, I recently helped a client sort out they call it their browser flow, essentially. Like, is there a way for us to facilitate a user ending up on a particular page without them knowing that's what we're doing? And I think that where we often kind of focus on external search volume, and like your point on internal search is so valuable, because we tend to just discount internal search, I feel, when really it's the best tool that we have to give us an idea of where our users want to be. Yeah, I think that's really cool. In terms of IA and that kind of side of stuff, is there a particular way that you both cluster topics to make sure that users end up on a particular area, a particular service? Is it based solely on search volume, or is there something deeper as part of that you look into?
I'm going to stay on the site that I was just talking about and answer that this way. So I'm going to say the niche. I can't say the business it was, but they were more like in the my brain's forgot how to describe their niche now. It's like they're estheticians, so like Botox, like face changing stuff, like non-surgical plastic surgery essentially is the kind of stuff that they did. And how we kind of planned their content and how it would flow was we were creating knowledge hubs essentially, but wanted to make it like a seamless transition. So it was like, there's the terms that we know we're never going to rank for. Like, I did not know this, but Botox, that's a brand.
I didn't know that. That's wild.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, we're never really going to rank for that. That's a branded term, but like, there's a lot of different ways to describe that. I'm going back so many years, I can't remember any of them. So just improv. But yeah, so we had to focus on the other terms. We can't say Botox, we know that, but we're not going to rank for that. So we'll create a page talking about Botox and all the things related to it. But that, for me, was never a priority. I didn't care that much because that's going to be a very top of the funnel page if we even did rank for it. They might be able to post about it on social media, it's still got a benefit. But then there's a million different things underneath it. That's where we can really focus. So we're not making a niche site. We're not going to make 3,000 pages on like lip fillers or anything like that. But we can address various concerns in a way. So we had like informational pages about different treatments. We had pages about what the process is like if you had this done, the recovery time, how to make sure you don't ruin stuff, because you can pay all this money and ruin it. Like if you have a filler, you're not supposed to like, I don't know, I'm not an expert, so don't quote me, but from my understanding, you can like push it into different shapes like within the first few hours, which I would definitely do. I'd just be like, I'm always touching my face.
And then forget about it and then be like, oh my God, this part of my lip's a bit bigger now. Yeah.
I get wonky suddenly, you know why. So we were addressing concerns like that, but then there were the other aspects where, okay, so what if someone doesn't know what their concern is? So like, what if they've just Googled crow's feet? What if they've Googled something else? Like, so we created like concerns, is what we ended up calling it, and then like treatment guides, and then care guides and things like that. We managed to create something really successful where we were able to speak in terms that people understand, but take them on a journey with us as well, because they were just like, oh, I'm researching what I'm happening, but it got to a point where it was like, well, they're on like their third care, like part of the care guide. I know we're going to sell this now. We could see it happen. It works so well. That's essentially it. I said it like I was going to talk more, but it works.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And even, I guess, with smaller clinics and stuff like that, local search came into it and stuff like that. I've done something similar, but on a specific, like, I think they operated in a county, but then looking at not necessarily just towns and cities in that place, but what smaller villages and things that actually kind of interact with their site a little bit more, or their social media as well, is something that's overlooked a lot. But even if we zoom out from local and then discuss more international SEO topics and things like that, if you're a site that operates in multiple different territories, then the way that you cluster your content is going to be very different to that, right?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, because you may not cover the same kind of topics. I can think of, for example, when I was working for a big consulting company, let's say, for example, we had Spain and we had Mexico. So, they didn't offer the same services in both countries. So we had, of course, certain verticals were available for one country, and for another country, other verticals. So, of course, all the content changed, but also those verticals that coincided, we made sure that we localized the content, since we're discussing our international SEO. And I think that some other important aspect of international SEO that is often overlooked is the importance of localization. So just not focusing on, like, let's say, okay, Spanish. The Spanish is not the same for Spain or Mexico. Let's say English is not the same for the UK or the US, no? And And I've often, when working in international SEO, I've often had situations with clients that there are translation agencies that offer services to, let's say, international Spanish. And these clients would say to me, but this is a thing because these agencies are offering this service. But of course, I mean, I have a translation background, so I'm not going to say I'm biased. No, but I am aware of apart from being a Spanish native speaker, I am aware of the fact that Spain and Mexico use different words and that there isn't such a thing as international Spanish. Just imagine like mixing also British English with American English in content, like the spelling, like wouldn't that be weird? That's not natural, no? So perhaps you may think this is cheaper, but at the end of the day, this is not going to bring you the results you want to get because users are going to think this is unnatural, no? So it is important to, when working in international SEO, to advocate for localization, to speak the language that our users speak. So in terms of using the right words, doing keyword research for each market. So the keyword research you may have for Spain, for example, it's not the keyword research you should be using for Mexico. And yeah, it's possible certain words will coincide, but many times you'll see that the words change, like you use a totally different word, but also maybe the needs or the offerings that you could have for each market. And also when talking about the language that the users speak, I'm also thinking of, apart from localization, and also thinking of accessibility, Billy, also because I know it's a topic you really care about, and me also, since I love all things UX, I also care about accessibility. Using the words that the users that they are familiar with, because I think many times when you work in a company, certain words are super natural for you, and you call things in a certain way, and maybe outside of that company, people call it differently, no? So it's important that we adapt that content to the language that users use in terms of their native language, but also what is natural for them, and that we don't use words that they may look like too technical if we know that they're not going to be understand that language. No, I don't know if Billy, you would like to add anything.
Yeah, there's two ways that I kind of need to mention here, but I'll start with the last point. Like, as SEOs, I feel like we convolute language a lot.
Oh, God, yes.
My mum doesn't understand me, she recently told me, because I've started just talking to my mum like how I talk to anyone. And my mum's like working class, Yorkshire,
yeah.
So she listens to me and she's like, oh, that's good. For years, I've been like, my mum thinks I'm doing good. She just says that as like a response because she doesn't know what I'm on about. And that is who actually our audience is not us. So we need to kind of step back and research how our users actually speak. And I'm really, really bad at names, and this is so bad. I was talking to someone literally an hour ago. They spoke yesterday about international SEO in Arab countries, and it was fantastic talking. We were having a really in-depth conversation about this. There are 22 countries that speak Arab, Arabic countries, and it's okay, 22 countries. There's no chance they're all speaking in the same way. So it's there's business Arabic, and that's essentially what we see online, because that's what all media platforms, websites, that's what it's become, and that is not actually how people search. So you can get real quick wins by making those changes. In terms of in an English way. So here in England, we wear flip-flops. Some people might call them slip-ons, but I've never done that.
Or thongs, as the Australians call them.
That's exactly it, yeah, thongs. I learnt that the hard way.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure can't remember what show it was. I feel like it was H2O, Just Add Water, if anyone watched that.
Yeah.
And I feel someone was like, I've got my thongs on. And I was like, as a teenager, I was like, how is this on Nickelodeon? But they're flip-flops.
Yep.
And that's just a language change that's so minor. I'm never going to rank thong shoes here.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the same way if you're scrolling through a .com website that does ship to the UK, as soon as you see American spellings, you're like, oh my God, they're going to charge me so much money in shipping. When actually it's going to be the same as any other website, but they're just not localizing the English content in the same way. And I guess it's the same across other languages too.
This is something that you see, like, I feel like you might have a lot to say on this, like as a UX thing. The SEOs, we don't think about the UX stuff, so the call to actions, the things that pop up as you're scrolling on the page that we don't always have any influence on, they're just generic, like cut and paste like across the world, and it's useless. Like, we need to localize currency, we need to localize all sorts, like.
Yeah, localization takes into account, not just the words, but also currencies, the units of measure, like miles, kilometers, all of this. It's important that we adapt it, but also, for example, I remember we had some articles that we had to like take from like an American website and publish for Spain and Mexico, and this was like an article, I just remember, like top 10 business books, and it talked like you could have like the title of the book, and also it said like, this book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So Barnes and Noble was a bookstore from the US I didn't know about, and it definitely doesn't exist in Spain, and the same for Mexico. So of course, when translating this content, so the translation agency that took care of it, they just left the links like that, like this is available in, the same but in Spanish, and I was like, but this Barnes & Noble doesn't exist in Spain, so should we go for, I don't know, like Casa del Libro, which would be like a Spanish, bookstore, book e-commerce, no? Or just remove that link, and is there any reason why also, should we really be using this Amazon link? Like, it also opened other conversations, no? Or, like, what should we do about this? Like, this is also part of, like, when you localize the content, or for example, supermarkets. So you have an article published on a UK website. It mentions Tesco. A Spanish user may not know that it's a supermarket, so should we say, like, the Spanish equivalent, like Mercadona, or, like, would it be strange, or should we say just, like, a supermarket instead, just remove the brand, no? So these are also considerations that you have to take into account when working in international SEO, and particularly localization.
This is a bit of a spiral, and I know I'm not the question asker.
Go on.
But like, so EEAT, how does that work in multilingual sites? Like, I know what builds authority here, but does that have won't have the same effects in Spain? Like if I'm saying my product's sold in Tesco, like you've said, if your product's not sold there in a big supermarket chain, like, can the EAT like does that?
Well,
how does
in
that
terms of like
translate?
third-party vendors and things like that, if you're, I guess, using Tesco, or if you're in the States, Barnes & Noble, if we go with the book like example, Barnes & Noble, or not Forbes here, what is it? Starts with an F, we're going to ignore it and say Waterstones instead. I think that's the big issue with like SEOs not consulting someone who's a native language speaker, right? Which I guess is what we're doing right now. Hello, what's a big bookstore in Spain so that I can buy someone a visit?
So, well, I guess, so how do you enhance EAT in this kind of, well, I guess like getting local reviews, no? I don't know, I'm not sure if I understood your question, like.
I guess, sorry, I did spiral a little bit because my brain's all over the place. But like, so say if you don't have those reviews in place, does reviews from like another country or like stocking in another country, does that because that won't have any impact on users really, because it's like, oh, it's saying something, but what
like having reviews from but is the product offered in that country? So let's say it's a product from the UK that is also offered in Spain, but we don't have reviews at the moment, like in Spanish.
Yeah.
Like I've been in this situation where working for software comparison tools where we didn't have like reviews in language, but we still featured like reviews that we got from users from other countries, and it was B2B software. So it showed like the LinkedIn profile, the photo of the user, the name and surname, and it like you could see like the country where they were from and the review, and perhaps it was in English, but there was like a translate button. I'm not a big fan of automatic translations, but that's the solution we had in place. It was better than 0 reviews. But yeah, that could be something you could do. Like potentially, you should try to have like reviews in that local that language, in Spanish in this case, no. But yeah, like showing reviews in other languages, or for example, like having like a button, an option that says like, I'm thinking of Glassdoor, for example, like the. It makes me laugh because when it's it's a bit tricky sometimes with the reviews of companies that you can see like the reviews that employees leave in English, but there are also options like see reviews in Spanish, no? So something like that, you can integrate like, okay, you can let the user choose like, okay, there's nothing in their language, but if you want, you can see our reviews in English, no? So
I hate dropping the A word, but annoyingly, that's something that Amazon does really well. I think as you're scrolling through, at least in English, it's like, okay, now see reviews from other countries. And these are users who have bought, for example, this book in Spain or in Germany, and it gives you, often in native language, a review. Not necessarily something that smaller sites can recreate, but I guess that's one thing they do well. Let's keep going with EEAT then, as you brought it up anyway. Is there a specific way that on-site you determine, let's say, trust, excluding reviews? I'm going to be challenging.
Excluding reviews, building trust. I just repeat the question back while I thought.
That's fine. I do that too.
I think it's very much about explaining and using your words and trying to figure out what's important to a user. So in my accessibility talk, I talked about it in terms of e-commerce because that's the easiest one. In my opinion anyway, I love e-commerce. But even if you're getting information, if your products, you've bought them from a wholesaler, then they're selling them themselves, we know to not use the copy from the wholesaler, we know that. But it's how can we individualize this? Can we take a user on a bit of a journey? So like, why was this created? I know I'm stepping into the helpful content here as well a little bit.
Fine.
But,
it all overlaps anyway.
Overlaps. But like, how is this used? Like, why was this created? Why are we selling this? What benefits can this actually have on my life? Like, how was this created? Was it created sustainably? Like, we can build a lot of trust by just spelling it out for our users, because this is all real. For an SEO, this is like really basic stuff, but especially for a user who might have accessibility needs, they want to know, can I actually use this product? Like, why does this exist? Is this going to benefit me? And if you kind of spell it out that way and just actually describe things in a way that a use case for it, almost like, what is the business case for this product? I don't care if that's a pair of Skechers, which I'm wearing at the minute. I sprained my ankle. Well, I twisted my ankle. I don't know if it's sprained. I'm not a doctor. So I was like, I need comfortable shoes. I was like, what shoes am I going to wear? So then I was looking. My response was, I need to buy new shoes. I did have Skechers, but I was Googling Skechers because I know they do the, like, they've got the like easy pull-on ones now and things like that. And you can really define yourself in different niches and sell that way, and I think that builds EEAT because you're being specific. You're taking someone on a journey. You're saying exactly what. So that for me, outside of reviews, really helps.
Like specifically in textual content as well. So then, like going back to like the Amazon example, when you keep examples that are just in a picture that doesn't explain anything, I think for folks who are using screen readers, that's all really, really useful stuff.
Yeah. And also I think that something that helps enhance EEAT is when, well, first of all, you need to be transparent with your customers. So for example, thinking of software review sites, for example, so how do we choose our software, or like the criteria for, review submission, like making sure like that you share like any, like, why are we showing all of this? Why are we recommending this? Like what criteria do we have? And I can also think of your money, your life pages. so healthcare, casino, which are niches that I work for. If there's anything like legislation that involves legislation or money in general, but also the health of the person that you are transparent with, like the criteria, and that you also, for example, for casino, you say we are only recommending licensed casinos in, for example, in Spain, that you state that that you're keeping it legal, and that also something that helps with EAT in general as well is links. So sources, anytime you say, okay, this was licensed by this entity, you link to that, and also when healthcare articles, you say according to the source of that healthcare provider, and that you make sure that you show those sources, especially with delicate niches like health or anything that impacts users' health or their economy. It's important that you, okay, if you're sharing this information, where does this information come from, no? Or healthcare, for example, I was working for a healthcare e-commerce, and we had a pharmacist that helped us. Back then I was doing content/SEO, and the pharmacist helped us a lot. So sometimes she would write the articles, but whenever, for example, I was writing an article, she would revise it, and we made sure that that the blog stated that we had like a pharmacist, and she had like the author page and the bio, and also when it came to the content team, even though we didn't have like a healthcare related background, we still like, we kind of specialized in certain areas. So for example, let's say essential oils, or just like if there was something like, or beauty products, like make sure that we stated this in the bio, something that we gain knowledge about, no? So the users could see like, okay, this writer is specialized in this kind of cosmetics, I don't know, any kind of content we were featuring, and that they could see that any content we were publishing that was like a healthcare professional behind supervising everything, of course.
Do you know what I think is really weird? Like, so much we get from Google, like, it's all about helping the user, it's all about helping the user. And then we get to EAT and we talk about external links and how it's important to, like, cite our sources. Like, the users don't really, a generic user doesn't care. If they were on the NHS website and they were talking about, I genuinely can't think of a medical condition right now.
Endometriosis.
Endometriosis.
There you go. Forefront of my mind. Go.
So they're talking about endometriosis. My mind is just not minding. So they're talking about endometriosis, and they've got all this information. Like the endometriosis isn't something that's very well researched. That's something that's very well known. But they're citing sources to Endometriosis UK and other leading places like that. Say if my mum was on that website, she's not going to NHS. That is the gospel of information in her head. She's not going to go elsewhere. Like I'll open this up to the audience, by the way. If anyone's got a yes or a no answer to this, like, do users actually, like a generic user, do they actually click out to see our cited sources? Is this just I think this is just a Google thing, right? Couple of nods.
If you were on your leading healthcare provider's website and it gave you a source about a condition you were researching, raise your hand if you click on it.
I would, because I'm a bit of a hypochondriac.
I mean, like, same.
Yeah.
I think it's all about giving them the tools to verify the information you're giving them, even if they don't want it.
Yeah.
Right?
That does make sense to me, but at the same time, sometimes, like, I see articles, and we all know when an article's been written by an SEO, because like every single statistic, even if it's cited several times, is linked out to back you up. And it gets to a point like, this is beyond user experience. This is purely for SEO reasons. And I would, if anyone wants to do a study on this, I would love it.
Honestly,
I don't have the energy, but I'd love to know like what the actual user experience and journey is to really EAT focused pages.
Yeah. I think it's such a difficult thing to get the right balance of, because for us, we are so paranoid about if we don't cite every single statistic, like the source of every single statistic we're mentioning, is Google going to penalise us when the client is just going, I just want this content on my website. Like, I'm doing different things to make sure that users know what I'm talking about. We don't need to do this every single time. On the flip side, if they want to publish something where they're mentioning statistics and not verifying where they're from, then if you get that random user who's looking through this, and like, you just said that 60% of men are better drivers than women. Where did you get that from? I'm going to bounce immediately. So it's a weird balance to strike, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess like if we're thinking WAT more broadly, and you've already mentioned helpful content, but we know this comes into it anyway, a little bit topical considering yesterday. But is there a specific way that you approach on-site content to make sure that WAT is being met, but also that it's helpful to your users? Because I think everyone does it differently, right?
Everyone does it differently. There's not set ways. Also, I've got another side. So I did the presentation yesterday with John, talking all about Google updates. Not once did he tell me there were going to be 2 updates yesterday. So I hope you were on Twitter, because they got rid of how-to schema. That doesn't work anymore as of Wednesday. So that one was late. And then there were an update to helpful content, which is going to be rolling out over the next few weeks. So that was great. Thank you for that. Outrageous.
Yeah.
But I don't know if any of you were at that talk yesterday. I'm going to pretend you wasn't, so that I can make the same point. Like, there's no set way of doing it, but the Google Search Quality Guidelines have some really good information and indicators on there. It's not a secret source. They're not telling you how to do it in your industry, because every industry is different. And I think it works. There's a bit of a testing aspect. You've got to try different bits of content. You've got to try different things on your page. You've got to mix up your headings every now and then, and you can build helpful content eventually. But every niche is different. Every site is different. Just a bit of trial and error.
Yeah.
I mean, I ran a training session on Wednesday, and I actually started an it depends tally on a flip chart, because I think after I started counting it, it was 14. But it does depend, right? And I think not necessarily just on the niche that you're in, but the location you're in as well, because I feel that different things are going to signify trust in different countries, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, it's funny how we kind of have an SEO conversation without saying it
I
depends.
know.
It's so
annoying.
But yeah, even yesterday when I was in my talk, I said at some point I'm tempted to say it depends, but I'm not going to. But I said it anyways. But yeah, your point, I agree.
I started saying it varies instead of it depends, just to avoid the tally. It varies depending on the situation. I feel like is too wordy, but it gets around it.
Sliding scale.
Yeah. All right. I think in terms of helpful content, then there's obviously not one way to go about it. And Billy, in particular, has had many theories from me about helpful content. Too many. But I think, there's never a catch-all, but is there a particular method that you use when you approach a client's site to assess whether or not the content existing on the website already is helpful or not?
I guess you've got to take a look at it holistically. You've got to look at the data. I can't just go look. I can't look at a piece of content and go, "Yep, that works," because what works for me might not be that works for their audience. Exactly. I've just noticed I'm shining my watch is shining a light on someone. So I've just turned it around. Oh, it wasn't my watch. It's still.
Oh, it's something else. Oh no!
Sorry.
Terrifying. Helpful content.
Helpful content.
Yeah, that thing.
So yeah, you need to look at the data. Is it working? Is it converting? Is it serving the purpose that it's supposed to? Is it actually like meeting the right intent? Is everything right there? And then you've got to go from there. But where SEOs, sometimes if you're in an agency, you don't have time to look at every single page like that. So we've got to make assumptions. But if we can break down bits of content into the various different niches and things like that of whatever it is their intents, we can then trial and error it a bit, and we can figure it out. It's essentially, I'm just repeating myself in different words.
It's all the same.
It's all the same,
So annoying.
but everything's always different, and it's very annoying.
But there are times I was thinking also that something that we often do is not looking at qualitative data as well. And when it comes to content, I can think of like B2B also, where some of the content that is produced is for, companies and perhaps sales teams or other teams may be sharing this content with clients, and they may be able to like get feedback from these clients saying, so I'd be happy if like, you could provide me more information about this specific area, or like maybe let's say, for example, when the whole ChatGPT thing started, these companies perhaps were not familiar with it, and they were talking to like the sales rep, like, oh, could you be able to give me more information about this? Like getting this feedback from these teams is very useful. I also yesterday I was talking about the importance of getting feedback, like user research, any user testing that was done that the UX teams could be able to share with us, but also sales teams can give us a lot of qualitative data, both from from the content we are producing, like do they find it useful, not just like anything on page, but also any downloadables, any reports, anything that is being created, that can be a very good source. And yeah, I think qualitative data, and I think that's, yeah.
I've come from an agency background, so I've worked on a lot of websites, which I know the two of you have as well, but there were one website in particular, and this was before EEAT, and it would have genuinely made my life easier if it existed then. So these were in, I'm still not allowed to talk about them, so I'm trying to pick my words. I'm going to say they were in a pharmaceutical niche, and their owner had a lot of opinions. And it was the first and only time I've ever had to do an offensive content audit, because they were, although they were medical practitioners, they didn't think highly of women, and they published it. Again, I worked for an agency, I couldn't pick my clients. And I wish EEAT existed then, because that having content like that really can ruin their reputation. I feel like it discredits a lot of stuff, and I think as a user it does as well. And I had to build an entire use case of how this content is negatively affecting their site. And if EEAT existed in the way it did then, that would have been such a nice and easy formula for that. I think I've messaged you about this before. I weren't supposed to, but I was sharing some very shocking links. But I think you've got to look at an entire site holistically, because this were from their blog and it were very old articles, but these were ranking, they were appearing in search, and it could easily ruin things for them. It could easily turn into negative press, it can turn into a lot of things. So we can't just look at what they've been doing in their products, and I know we will let a lot of people will go back and look at old content, but you've got to really look at holistically and try and figure out what are the people here doing. Is there anything cool they're doing that we can bring in? Are they doing anything terrible that we need to let's try and separate the website from as well? You can't just look at a site and go, yeah, I figured this out immediately. There's a million aspects, and as SEOs, we're in this really weird flux, because we're not developers, we're not user experience, we're not accessibility people, we're not content writers, we're not marketers, we're not this, we're not that. No team wants us, but we do all these jobs that fall into it. And I feel like we're in an opportunity to be the catch-all and figure it out. So we need to look at we need to look at press, we need to look at reviews, we need everything.
And social media also, let's say Twitter, or X now, no? I'm never gonna call it X.
Never.
Sounds too corny.
See if users are complaining about a company or a product. I think we often forget about these channels, no? But we can get a lot of feedback there, and also are they struggling with something in particular? This could also give us content ideas, no? So yeah, it's so holistic.
Billy, you've already mentioned something that I wanted to talk about, which was content audits, because I love a content audit. They are my favourite thing, which makes me sound like someone who's very boring, and I am. If you were to approach a content audit just generically for a client, what are some key things that you would look for in terms of assessing whether content should exist on the site still or be removed? Again, another hot topic at the moment, but also content cannibalization and how you might address that. I don't know which one of you wants to answer first. Go for it.
Yeah, I wrote a few interesting topics.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say it depends.
Yeah, go on.
But maybe for content cannibalization, I think that could be an audit itself, a cannibalization audit, see how often it happens. And also for international SEO, actually this can also happen between markets. I've been in a situation where, for example, maybe now I'm changing the topic a little bit, but cannibalization can also happen between markets. If you're not localizing the content enough, if you're not implementing hreflang tags properly. And I've been in situations where this happened. So yeah, sometimes this audit could go also beyond that domain itself. Let's say I'm doing a content audit for Spain, but you don't just focus on that domain, but also potentially domains that use that same language. But yeah, there isn't of course, nothing is set in stone in SEO, no, but there isn't just one way to do a content audit, and it would depend on so many factors, the kind of company, the size of the company, the website. Sometimes, you may have a template and that maybe you've been using, and then you join a new company, you work for a new client, and it's oh, this template, I can't use it. So, but I don't want to say it depends. But it really does, though.
But it does. It really does.
Yeah,
no, I think that's valid. And the international stuff in particular, weirdly, during the training session that I had on Wednesday, we were discussing territories where you speak more than one language, as a national thing, and about how they were actually still competing with each other in search results, because you're still going to have people searching in different languages in the same country. And I think it's something that came up quite recently with Google, wasn't it, with how they treat multi-language searches in a given country, and something that you definitely need to make sure that you're keeping on top of. Yeah,
definitely.
On top of that as well, I'm very, very, unfortunately, very, very British. I don't speak other languages. I wish I did. I've tried learning French on Duolingo, but I forget Duolingo exists.
Yeah.
But there's also where it comes into play is where there's multi-purpose keywords and search terms and stuff. So if you're searching iPad and iPads, and there's the plurals and things like that, because that is different content that you would see. If you searched Apple, let's say, because that's easier to explain, everyone's, I feel. If you search Apple, you could be searching the fruit. You could be searching Apple, as in iPad, as that Apple. Yeah. It's really interesting how those are approached as well, I think.
Because your previous browsing history is taken into account to some degree, right? So then,
of course,
if I've just bought an iPhone, but then I'm really looking for an apple crumble recipe and press enter too soon, I'm still going to get Apple the company appearing, which I think is something that maybe we don't take into account as much as we should when we're talking about content and keyword rankings in particular. For broader keywords, maybe.
I know this is a thing in PPC, because I had this conversation with someone from PPC, and that's really got me thinking about it at the moment. But I guess, is there, I wonder if there's something that we can take from international like SEO practices and apply it to these terms or something. I don't know. I'm spiraling.
Like search intent.
Yeah.
Yeah, like how, like what can we do more there? Like
To make sure that the intent is clear.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I guess entities as well, like, you know, those, like the words that would naturally appear in an article. Let's say, for example, I was thinking of Texas. So Texas, the first thing that may come to our mind may be like the state in the US, but it could also be a music band. So yeah, I think that, you know, context is key, and anything that, you know, I think that when creating that content, like you're going to add enough context, no, so that it's clear. But yeah, it's possible that users may search Texas, and they may not think like, and of course they're not going to think like an SEO, no. But if they don't find what they're looking for, they may add like, I don't know, like let's say they are a fan of the music band, they say, okay, Texas. If I search Texas, I only see the state. So Texas band, Texas concerts, no, like, yeah, that extra.
I guess even Texas concerts is going to show you concerts.
In Texas,
it'll
in
make
Austin,
it a localized search, right?
It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
I chose a bad one. I think
I think that's a perfect example because that happens a lot, I feel, just generally in SEO. It's too wild. I hate generic keywords because like trying to content plan around generic keywords, I feel is quite difficult to do, which is why topic clusters are so important, right?
And even sometimes I was thinking another example, like roulette, for example, could be like the casino roulette, but also like a game with like different cities, like other kind of roulettes. I was checking that keyword recently, and it can be so wide. And maybe you are a casino company and you want to like launch some offerings in a country, and you see that everybody wants to like everybody's searching roulette. It's more search than blackjack, let's say. But maybe they want to see the other kind of roulette. So when also maybe I'm stating the obvious, but when you do keyword research, like search those keywords as well. Try to see the SERPs, because maybe you are thinking, when roulette has a lot, like a super high search volume, but maybe the roulette, like most of the results you see in the SERPs for that country are not a casino roulette, but another kind of game, like the roulette of fortune, I think it's called in English, no? Like, I'm thinking of an example in Spanish. It's like la ruleta de la suerte, which is not like the casino one.
See, all I think of is my uni days with shot roulette, which just gives me flashbacks. Too much sambuca. No, I think that's a really valid point, though. I think particularly when we think about back to kind of content cannibalization and things like that as well, when we're maybe trying to reinforce topical authority with informational content for something that is then also competing with a very generic page. So I think an example, maybe if you're selling a board game, where your blog about that board game is ranking above your sales page for that game, for example. I don't know if there's a particular way maybe that you both address that kind of stuff, where maybe you've got informational content ranking above your transactional, and how you may like address that either by optimizing your transactional page a little bit better, or optimizing your browsing flow from the informational page.
So I have a traumatic memory.
just one.
I have a traumatic SEO experience.
Oh yeah.
Just vent.
In general.
Yeah, generally.
But once upon a time, I started with a new client who actually had they had a very good content team. A content team who learnt some technical SEO terms and started trying to do things. And they had a lot of content, like blog content, where it was like how to use this. I'm going to use the board game. How to play the board game, like page that was ranking really well. I'm just rewriting the story to fit this. So give me a second to keep them protect their ID.
How to play board game.
How to play board game.
Yeah.
And that was ranking above all their products that were related. And their content manager had the lovely idea, because she'd read about canonicals online. So she canonicalized all of the blog posts to the product page for everything. For every time it ranked above it. That was.
So I assume that did not work.
No, it was. It was fun. It was fun. But you can start to specify things, and you can also use it as an opportunity to sell, because like maybe the search intent is, if someone's searching that, it could be a really complicated game, and they might not be looking for that product straight away. So you could maybe try and sell that product as part of the blog post. Just take them on a journey with you. But you could also try and separate it out more and try and make how everything's connected a bit more clear to Google. So you could have that product page and include the blog content like that, like the opposite. Like say, okay, here's an article on how you play this game. Here's an article on how you cheat at the game.
All about internal link it.
Yeah, internal link it better. Make sure the hierarchy's clear, and it might fix itself. You've got to make those. You've got to fix it. Just don't add canonicals.
No,
for the
please.
sake of it.
Oh, no.
I've checked. I'm a bit of a spy, and I've seen that she's been doing it still. And I was like, no.
And it's a nice prospect.
Could be. I don't ever go through that again.
That's fair.
And well, for some reason, this made me think of, when we have like complex products, but also like expensive, let's say, air conditioning, I was thinking of like an example, like I was checking like the Leroy Merlin website, which sells all sorts of like air conditioning and things for the house, etc., different appliances. So for example, for air conditioning, you have like the product description, apart from being detailed and everything. I really like the fact that they had like at the bottom, like articles like related, like how to choose an air conditioning or like the different, types of. And I think it's very important that, not just like when we have blog posts that we try to like add, of course, the products that we're hoping that, or the categories, that we hope like users will click on and purchase, but also that when we have like those products that we also link to like useful content. And I can also think of the Thomann, the German music instrument website. It's really good. I recommend you to have a look, because in terms of SEO and UX, it's excellent, but also like how to choose your guitar or your like, it's also, they also have like a lot of, it's really good examples.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we're running a little bit short on time now.
Time flies.
I know, I didn't think it'd been that long. So I guess if you want to open the floor to any questions, if anyone's got any for our two wonderful speakers, feel free to raise your hands. Yeah, come on.
Hi. You covered this briefly with content cannibalization and having blog posts appearing above product pages. How do you essentially decide where a piece of content should sit on a site? Is it to do with search intent, and you split off everything that's perhaps top of funnel over here, blog, inspiration, whatever it's called, and everything that's further down, transactional, commercial, is more on that product journey through the main part of the site?
It's a good question.
If I could premise why I've asked it, is because we've seen so many keywords in the past 3 or 4 months move up the funnel. So we're seeing more of that content rank above our product pages. So the question is, what do we do with that content, and how do we get the right commercial pages in front of people still?
I think it's interesting because search adapts quite a lot. So I'm going to go back to Apple for a second. So say if you search iPad, you get like several things from them. So you'll see the latest iPad, the category page for iPads, and then just like, there's another one, but I can't remember it. So I'm going to just pretend it's them too. So because the search intent could change, you could be searching as someone that just wants the latest iPad. You could be someone that wants to browse iPads. There's professional ones, there's just generic commercial ones, there's all sorts. So you need to try to identify what content is resonating with your users, and sometimes search changes.
Yeah.
So there's certain industries, I've seen it when working with like teaching resources, where sometimes the one piece of content, it'll be like they want a specific product, and then eventually it's more like, well, how can I use this in a classroom? And then because what people are looking for adapts. So it might be worth having some time testing and trying different things. I'd recommend it not with like a big seller, like something very middle. Identify something that's like your middle list products. And you could try focusing on optimizing the products if that's what you want, but you could also go, if it's informational content that's ranking higher, let's look at that. Let's see, can we add additional call to actions? Can we add in a section midway through at the top, like where can we put things and where we're pushing people to the bit of the journey we want to get them on? There's not one set way, unfortunately. It's a sliding
Unfortunately, a sliding scale as opposed to it depends, right?
Yeah.
But test things out, and that's why I recommend the middle list, because there's no point doing it on like a low performing thing, but you don't want to mess with your highest performing thing.
And I was thinking just now, sometimes you may have like the search intent, how it can change. I can think of like when it comes to like a healthcare website that may also sell cosmetics. So before COVID, face mask was more like the main search intent was like a cosmetic, like product for the face. And then COVID arrived, and we know what face mask then meant, no? And sometimes you could have websites where, they had, face mask, the cosmetic, and then, the COVID, we know, and how it can change, no? And so you also have to take into account how sometimes this like the intent could change, but also like inside the same website, you could be in situations where you don't know, like, okay, this like the main intent was this, and now it's changed, and I'm actually offering two products that are called the same. In Spanish, for example, it's mascarilla, both of them. It's like, yeah, so you need to be aware of any potential change due to life-changing events or just anything that happens in the world.
Yeah. I think like as well as that, like the generic internal linking and things like that, like making sure that you're using your anchor text correctly and keywords within that too. Yeah. I think we may have time for one more real quick before we wrap up, if anyone's got one.
Or you can ask us afterwards with a coffee.
Yeah.
Twitter, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We are pretty active.
Which I was about to do. So Billy, Sarah, how can people find you to talk to you online as opposed to with a coffee after?
So all of my social handles are the same. I'm on it with getting them. I'm Billy Gina, and Gina is G-E-E-N-A. Or I got introduced as Billy Gina recently, so spell it like that.
Nice.
That's how you can find me.
Nice.
And in my case, so on Twitter, I'm Sara, so without a final H, so it's S-A-R-A, and then F-D-E-Z.
Yeah.
It's like Fernandez, my surname, but like shortened.
Yeah.
And then LinkedIn, Sara Fernandez Carmona. And if you cannot find me, ask me. I can give you like a business card if you like. But yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to find us.
And on the Brighton website.
Yeah, on the Brighton website. And there's also the lovely Chloe that you can find online.
Yeah.
His Twitter handle, I always call her as a full name. I mean,
it's not. I do have a surname, surprisingly. No. Chloe Ivy Rose SEO. I mostly post SEO memes. So if you like that stuff, that's me. But yeah, thank you both. This has been great, despite me being completely frazzled. So thank you.
Thank
Sounds
you.
amazing. Thank you.
Bro, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.